Well, there's a lot going on in our passage tonight, but really, if you just look at the basic sentence structure and break it down, the message was really simple. Paul is telling the Thessalonians, we tried to come see you. We couldn't. We sent Tim. He said, you're fine. We're happy about that. And that's really the whole section. He could have said it in 5 sentences. And yet we have 17 verses. What's going on with that? Well, before we look at that and go, well, that's just our silly Bible being excessive in its language. Before we dismiss it that way, we need to pause and get some perspective about who we're dealing with here, because honestly, by any estimation, any human metric, you would have to say the Apostle Paul was one of the most influential men who ever lived on the planet. His writings have been influencing nations from the first century until this one. And it's interesting, as he particularly deals with the Thessalonians, you see it in the book of Acts, chapter 17, records Paul's initial ministry to the Thessalonians. And it says he came to them and preached to them and developed a community, and there was some pushback from the community, and they looked for Paul to attack him, couldn't find him, attacked some of his followers, and drugged them out before the city authorities. And Acts 17:6 says this. It says, when they could not find him, they dragged out Jason and some of the brothers before the city authorities, shouting, these men who have turned the world upside down have come here also. And so even when Paul showed up in Thessalonica, even as he arrived there and his enemies looked at him, his enemies had to say, hey, this is the guy who's not just turning our city upside down or our province. This guy and his crew, they are turning the world upside down. They have a reputation as they go from city to city that they come in and they aren't influenced by the culture, they change the culture. These men are moving to cities and now they're in ours. And when they show up places, they change cities. These are major influencers. That's what his enemies are saying. And you see in the book of Thessalonians, Paul will say, hey, to you Thessalonians, you are changing not just your city, but your province of Macedonia and neighboring provinces as well. You guys are making a difference. You're changing your world. You're turning the world upside down. And you see Paul, through his writings, has impacted the globe throughout generations. And so when you read these words, when you see how long they are, you go, wait a second, before we dismiss them, we have to realize these are the words from a man who has changed the world. And so we need to go, what's going on with this guy? And how do you become a person like that? How do you become a person that when people talk about you, they go, oh yeah, that guy, changing the world. Every culture they move into, they change that culture. It doesn't change them, it shifts because of their presence. How do you become a person like that? Well, I'll tell you something just real quickly up front. You don't do it alone. And you see that with Paul. Paul will travel with a crew and he'll talk to the Thessalonians as a community. You don't do it alone. It's communities that change cultures. And yet you can have a team or a community that doesn't change anything and doesn't do anything really worthwhile in the long run. And so it's not just, you just gotta get a team. That's not enough. How do you get a team that changes the world? That's the question tonight. How do you become a group of people that people say, hey, that group of guys, all I know is when they showed up, they changed this whole department. Or they say that little dorm of girls, they changed the whole dorm. That little collection there, they changed the whole sorority. Grace System's different, and we can trace it back to them. They have turned the world upside down. How do you become a person like that? That your life echoes into eternity like this, that you change the world. Well, we're gonna look at that, and what I love about this text is we're getting a window into their relationships tonight. We're getting to peer into their life. This isn't a complex theological treatise. This is just a window on how they did life together as a community. I watched a TV show the other day, and it was about Randy Couture. Don't know who he is. Randy Couture is 47 years old, and the only man that age who is still successful in mixed martial arts, fighting people for a living. And they were doing a show on Randy Couture, and on the show they said, we've done some diagnostic tests of Randy. You see all these tubes plugged into him, and they said this man, when he exercises, he has the cardiovascular ability of a man in his 20s, half his age. And they said, so in this program, we will figure out how Randy has accomplished this. And I remember when I heard that, I stopped and went, I wanna know that. I wanna know how he's done that. How can you be in your 40s and operate like a 20-year-old? I wanna see, what's he eating? Who does he hang out with? What do they talk about? What do they prioritize? What's going on in your gym? Because I'm gonna do that. And then the next show was like, and here's how a woman who's a professional billiards player keeps in shape. And I'm like, I don't care about that. It doesn't matter at all. And yet here in this text, it tells you, hey, we're going to get a window into, this is a community that changed their city, changed their province, changed neighboring provinces, and then turned the world upside down. And we're going to get to peer into their community and see, what do they talk like? How do they relate to each other? What do they prioritize? What do they act like? And we're going to see, and Lord willing, become communities that can change the world. And so you look at this, and we're going to see a couple things, but I want to just walk you through it. Look at verse 17. It says, "But since we were torn away from you, brothers, for a short time, in person, not in heart, we endeavored the more eagerly and with great desire to see you face to face." Now, if you missed it, the simple sentence in there was this: we endeavored to see you. That's what he was saying. Tried to come see you. That's it. But if you notice, he's packed it full of other things. And really, we endeavored to see you is just a little sentence that lets you get to these other things. And what's he saying? He starts by saying, since we were torn away from you. When he came to preach to them, persecution made him had to leave early. But he doesn't just say, I had to leave early. He uses the word the Greek word from which we get the words orphan. A child ripped away from their parents losing a child. He says, you were ripped away from me. And then he calls them brothers. You're like family. And then he says, I was gone in person, literally in face, but not in heart. My heart was still with you. And then he moves on and he says that I endeavored, and didn't just I endeavored to see you, I endeavored the more eagerly with great desire. And he doesn't just use the word desire, he uses epithumia on top of desire, like the biggest desire I can think of. In negative passages, it's translated lust. He said, I really wanted to see you guys. And not just see you, then he throws in face to face. I wanted to see your face. And then when you go, why? Why does he want to see them? He tells you in the next verse, I endeavored all the more eagerly to see you. Why? Verse 18, because I wanted to come to you again and again, but Satan kept me. So what's he saying here? I want to see you. Why, Paul? Because I want to see you. That's his thing. Now, why talk to him like that? I think pragmatically on one end, I think what he's trying to do is, here they were, Paul created this little community, and then he had to leave, and I imagine they were going, why hadn't he come back? And then they were attributing motive and saying, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he doesn't care about us. And I think Paul is loading this front end here to tell them, hey, I want to be real clear about something. I left, but I want you to know that when I left, it was a ripping away from you. Because when I look at you, you know what I think? I'll tell you what I think. I think you're family. I think you're family, and I may have been torn away physically, but you know what? I wasn't torn away in my heart. My heart is still right there with you. And the truth is, I have been passionately pursuing every avenue to try to come see you again. That's where I've been the last couple weeks, trying to see your face. Why? Because I want to see you. Because I want to see you. And I think Paul looked at them and said, I want you to be real clear. I love you. You're like family to me. And then he tells them why in verse 19. He says, for what is our hope or joy or crown of boasting before our Lord Jesus at his coming? Is it not you? He says, here's why I care about you guys so much. You want to know why I'm so passionate about you? Because when the Lord Jesus arrives on this planet, when he comes back and stops history, he says, you know what's going to be the best thing in my life? You. You are my crown. You are my glory. And you're not just the thing I'm proud of. You are my joy. And he says it twice. What's my joy in this world? It's you. I want you to know that. You're my family. I care about you. You're the joy of my life, and you're the best thing I have. Can I ask you something? You ever had someone talk to you like that? I mean, outside of a romantic or sexual encounter? I mean, for most of us, you don't talk at that level of emotional intimacy. You don't use words like that. I was lustfully passionate to be in your presence. We don't talk like that in normal conversation. You ever felt this way? Let me ask you this. You ever felt this way about a community of people? This isn't a romantic text. He's not writing to his girlfriend. He's writing to a little group of believers. You ever had a community that you could talk to like this and they wouldn't go, hey, easy, chief, all right? You got a group like that? Because let me tell you something. The community that turns the world upside down, they talk like this. They love each other. What's the first thing that I would say about a community like this that changes the world? Paul is invested emotionally, and they are too. He'll say later, and you long for me like I long for you, and he'll use the same word. You guys love me as passionately as I love you. He is invested emotionally. He loves them. And he doesn't just love them, he has completely leaned into the relationship. He is all in. Every chip is in. He has given his heart away to them. What is my joy? It's you. I think the first thing you see about a community that changes the world is they have a love, and it's not just a love like, yeah, I think you're great. It's a love that leans in, that says, I am connected to you, so much so that my joy is bound up with you. That if you're doing well, I'm joyful. If you're not doing well, my heart's broken. We all have people in our lives that we like them, they're our friends, but if their life goes hard, we go, I'm sorry, dude, that totally stinks. I'll pray for you, right? Or if something goes well in their life and they're like, I'm just so happy, you go, well, great, okay, farmer's fight, take it easy, all right? And we're sort of happy for them. But then we have other people in our lives that when something devastates them, it devastates us too. And when something thrills them, it thrills us too. And Paul says, that's the kind of community I have here. This little believing community, I am totally emotionally connected to you, so much so that he'll say, when Timothy came back and said, you're okay, did you check what he said at the end? When I found out you're okay, he says, now I can live. I mean, did that just sound a little dramatic? But he means it. He says, I've been comforted in my afflictions, and now I can live, I can breathe, because I know you're okay. That's what matters to me. I love you. Do you have people like that? Do you have a community you could talk to like that and they wouldn't think it was totally weird? They do this. That's what this community's like. They love each other, and it's not just a loving, it's a full emotional investment that, man, if you're hurting, I'm hurting. And when you're joyful, I'm joyful. That's the kind of community he has here. And I gotta tell you something, we know world-changing people are like this. We know that. If I was to ask you, who's the best teacher you ever had? Who are the best teachers in the world? Who would you say? You wouldn't necessarily even say the smartest or most educated ones. Who would you say? You would say the best teacher in my life was the one that I felt like really cared, and really cared that I did well, that their greatest joy was when I flourished. That's who you'd say the best teachers were. Who are the best coaches? That's what the best coaches are like. Now, I don't mean this, don't get political on me. I don't mean this as a knock on Turgeon. I don't know him personally. I knew Gillespie a little bit, and I'll tell you one thing I loved about Coach Gillespie of the basketball team. Coach Gillespie was a bit of a train wreck in some areas in life. But I got to tell you something, one thing about him. Whenever he talked about his team, he would cry. And I believed it, because it wasn't necessarily advantageous places to cry. At a press conference, it's not normal for a grown man to break into tears. But I tell you, you watch him and you go, that guy coaches with such passion. And that passion comes from the reality that he wants them to win. He wants them to succeed. And as we would pray and get ready for Breakaway, I used to walk all through the bowels of this facility. And I got to tell you, there was big banners up down there. And you know what they said? They said, family, family. And I think they believed it. So we love each other. We're all in. If you win, I win. If you lose, I lose. We're family. That's the kind of people who make an impact. I got to tell you, for me, the first time I really felt this at maybe a new and deep level was in college. I remember I was called up to be the chaplain of an organization that had some Christian people, some non-Christian people, this little mixed bag of dudes. And I joined this thing and I became chaplain, and it wasn't, something changed. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I'm the chaplain. What do I do? Take pictures, write the minutes? Okay, I don't know. It wasn't like a little job suddenly. For some reason, God flipped a switch in me that when I would look out in these people, it wasn't just like, okay, I got this job, my job's to do X, Y, and Z. I looked at them and I'm like, these are my people. And I'm here to try to help them grow spiritually. And I got to tell you, something happened to me that I began to pray for these guys, to hit my knees and fast for them and weep for them. And I got to tell you something, when I saw them grow spiritually, it thrilled me. When I saw them do something crazy and stupid, I wanted to slap them around and beat them and throw something. I'm like, what's the matter with you? Don't ever do that again. Praise the Lord, all right? And there was something about them where, man, their brokenness broke me and their joy thrilled me. And I got to tell you something, when I look at this is what Paul says life's about. And I got to tell you, what kills me is many Christians, if you asked them, at the end of days, what's valuable as a believer, they would say, I'm reading my Bible, I didn't get drunk, I'm not cussing. And Paul says, when I hit the end, he says, you know what will be my crown of boasting at the end of days? It'll be you. That I have a little community around me that I poured my whole life into. He said, when it's all over, that's all that matters. You. And so everything I have is about you. It's interesting, I'm not really into People have tried those exercises, where they were like, imagine you died and what would it say on your tombstone? And I was always like, my name, I don't care. Like those games never really was like, it doesn't matter to me. What would you want him to say at your funeral? It's over. And then eat a cake. I don't care. It's like, I never really was like, I don't know. But I read a book today. This little devotional book, and the book was, I don't know, it got me. It was kind of came in the back door. The book was like, okay, imagine for a minute, you're at the doctor and it's talking you through it. It says, okay, imagine doctor goes out, doctor comes in. It's easy for me to imagine. I've had that moment. He says, imagine him coming in and saying, hey, it's terminal, man. You got maybe a year and you're not coming back. And I think it hit me differently now because I know some people who've gotten that news, and I know them real well. And I think it's because I've had enough surgeries in my life that it's not as hard for me to imagine that moment anymore. But I was totally hooked in. And I'm reading this and I'm saying, okay, what would that moment be like? And they started asking, what would you start changing? Would you keep doing the stuff you're doing, or would you mix it up? Would you take this? What would go out? What would stay in? What would go out? What would you shift around if you knew I only got a couple months to live? And what was wonderful about my life is I looked and said, okay, if I realized I had about a year to live, it was like, would you go skydiving? Would you travel the world? And I said, no. I would stay right here, and I would keep doing this. Because this right here is all that matters in the end, that I get to speak the truth of God to people who will listen. And then I thought about tomorrow night, because I have a little group of our guy team leaders that I teach the Bible to. And I said that would stay. This moment and that moment would matter more than anything in those final years. That I could take what God's taught me and entrust it to people who could do something with it when I die. That's what would matter to me. And the rest was like, there's a lot of stuff I would cut out, honestly. I looked at that and was like, there's a lot of things I'm doing now that in the end don't really matter. But what really does is people. And I want to ask you, when you think about your life at the end of days, you think about the money you're going to make, you think about the general holiness you will accomplish as a believer? Or do you look around and you say, when I show up at the end of it all, I want to have a little crowd around me and say, this is what I gave my life to, these faces. And I just got a picture in my head, and I'm not going to say it was like a vision because I don't know if I have those or whatever. I'm not saying people can't, but I don't know if I do. But I just had a picture in my head. I'm going to say it. I pictured a college girl showing up at the end of days, looking into the face of Jesus when he comes back, and smiling from ear to ear because surrounding her are a group of little junior high girls. That you know what they're going through. You know right now how awkward that transition is. And you decided, I'm not just going to keep going, sophomore, junior, senior, career, family, kids, death within a minivan. But somewhere in here, I'm going to stop and go, you know what? I may be on that train, but I'll tell you, sitting next to me on that little train will be a bunch of little faces that I will speak the truth to. So when I show up at the end, I can be surrounded by them. And guys, I want that for you. If you're a junior, you're a senior, where are your men? The men that you're training up, where are they? Paul says, when I hit the end, that's what matters. Paul loved him, and he loved him, and they knew it. He told him. And that's hard for us to do sometimes. But he found a way to look him in the face and say, hey, I love you. But notice he didn't just love him. I want to keep moving here, and I'll do this quick. He says in verse 3, therefore, when we could bear it no longer, we were willing to be left behind at Athens alone. That doesn't sound real like, oh, you're willing to be left alone. Wow, such a sacrifice. But when you realize he almost died in every single city, being left alone was probably kind of a big deal, He's way more controversial than Kanye, all right? Kanye alone at an airport could go south real fast, right? Paul's been trying to get murdered in every town. He was like, you know what? They may kill me, but Timothy, quit bodyguarding me. Get in there and let me know how they're doing. But not just how they're doing. Look in verse 2. It says, and we sent Timothy, our brother and God's co-worker in the gospel, to establish and exhort you in your faith. He said, I sent Timothy not just to hear how you guys are doing and tell you guys I love you so much and I just love you to pieces and find out if you love me back. He said, that's not why I sent him. I sent him to stabilize you and to call you forward. That's what those two words mean. To establish you and then to call you to be more than you are right now. And he says, so that no one will be moved by these afflictions, so that you won't get shaken, you won't get decleated. So Paul's telling him, the reason I sent Timothy was because I was worried about you. When life got hard, you would just fall over. And so I sent Timothy to get you some strong legs under you and then to make you a better person than you are right now. And then he tells him about the afflictions that are coming. But look in verse 5, he says, for this reason, when I could bear it no longer, I sent to learn about your faith for fear that somehow the tempter had tempted you and our labor would be in vain. He said, I wasn't just worried about affliction in your life. I was worried about temptation. I was worried that you were in a situation in life that if certain temptations would come, it would totally rip your life apart and everything would be vanity. You would lose years and they would be worthless. And so he comes to them and says, hey, I love you guys so much. I'm crazy about you. I can't stop thinking about you. I'm lusting to see you again. But you know what? I'm sending Timothy to talk to you because you're not done yet. And I'm afraid a little bit of affliction will knock you over. And I'm afraid there's some temptations that'll totally deplete you. And so you got some learning to do. And then I love it in verses 9 and 10 as he's praying, verse 10, praying most earnestly night and day that we may see you face to face. He says it again, I'm just praying, God, night and day I want to see you, but then look why. He says, so that I may supply what is lacking in your faith. He says, I can't wait to see you again. And literally what he says is, I can't wait to see you again so I can address your deficiencies. Can you imagine getting a letter like that? How would that feel? Dude, I'm coming to see you. It's going to be amazing. I just can't wait to come over. We're going to hang out. We're going to go do stuff. And then I just can't wait to address your shortcomings because you've got some, and we're talking about them. And the first one he's going to address next week is talk about sex. He's going to say, hey, your sexual expressions in life are all jacked, so sit down. We got to talk. So let me show you something. Number one, he's emotionally invested. But for some of you, when I talk about that, like you got to tell him you love him and you're connected to him. Some of you are like, yeah, we're supposed to love each other and you're supposed to tell me you love me every day. All right, and then like it becomes like this emotionally needy thing. Paul is emotional with them. He's emotionally invested. My joy is your joy is my joy. He's invested, but he's not emotionally needy. He's not emotionally needy. He's emotionally invested, but not needy. Tim Keller said it this way, and I love it. He gave them his heart, but he kept his head. He has leaned into them, but his feet are planted. Or the way I like to say it about my friends, they love me, but they're not impressed with me. Because if they were too impressed by me, if Paul was just like, oh, I just really want them to like me. I just hope these Thessalonians aren't mad. I'm just writing this letter to me. Are y'all not mad because I love y'all? You love me too? Oh, yeah. All right. He wants them to like him. He'll say that later. But if Paul was just worried about their approval, he wouldn't say, hey, I need to exhort you because I'm not sure how you're doing and you've got some shortcomings and we're going to talk about them. Someone who's just looking for their approval could never talk with that level of truth. And some of you know what I'm talking about. Some of you, you've been hanging with a crowd that you know doesn't love your Savior and you're telling yourself, I'm there to be a witness. And yet when the moment comes to address their shortcomings, you don't. Or maybe you do some like silly little halfway like, you should drink less. What? Nothing. Jesus, what? And if you were to honestly step back and assess it, you've had zero impact. Why? Because at the end of the day, what you care about, this is going to hurt, is not them, but what you care about is their approval. And that's hard. And it's hard to see that in yourself. I see it in me. We see it in ourselves. We want people to like us. Paul wants them to like them. That's normal. But if you really love somebody, you'll tell them the truth. And you pray about the right way to do it. I'm not saying go out there and get aggressive on everybody, but the reality is true love rejoices in the truth. That's what 1 Corinthians 13 says. Love rejoices in the truth. And if you really love somebody, we all know this. The good friend is the one who will come up to you and say, hey, dude, you got something in your teeth that's all, hey, you need to deal with that, all right? That's a good friend that's not too scared to say that, right? And you go, thank you. That's a good friend. I remember when I was in college, the guy, and I've told this story before, on a mission trip, guy that I knew loved me. We made a pact early on in this mission trip. There was a 7-Eleven across the street, and we made a pact together that we would never deny one another a Slurpee run. And so there were times at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were in the inner city, a dangerous place. A kid got shot right out in front of the church. I'd be laying there in bed, and I would hear this, Ben, yeah, Slurpee run. All right, let's do this, all right? And he would ask me questions, and I remember we are on a retreat together, and I risked at one moment telling him something. You know, people ask your prayer requests, and you tell them, oh, like I've got an uncle. I think he's my uncle that's sick. Pray for him, all right? And we just kind of make up stuff. I took a risk on this guy, and I told him about the deepest pain in my life and asked him to pray for it. And every couple days, as we're drinking a Slurpee or whatever, he would just look at me and say, hey, I just want you to know I'm still praying for you, right there. He said, and I'm going to pray every day for a year. And he would let me know every couple days, I've been praying every day. And so I knew that guy cared about me. And so as much as he loved me, it was easier to take it when we went on a run one day. And he told me, hey, man, he said, I love you. You can talk however you want around me. He says, but you know what? Your language, because I would cuss a lot. He said, it's confusing when you're cussing as a missionary. It confuses the kids. He said, and I think you should stop. And he said, and I remember sitting there and going, do people notice this? And he says, yeah, I've noticed it's kind of made things socially awkward. And I'm like, I had complete blinders, like I didn't even see that. And I remember I felt real embarrassed, and then I felt angry that it had been a while and none of the people on my little team had told me that it bothered them or that they thought it was bad. Nobody helped me with a glaring deficiency in my life. And I remember looking at Ben and saying, I know that guy cares because he spoke the truth to me. There's a statue of Jan Hus in Prague that says, love everyone, wish the truth for everyone. The first time I read it wrong, but I like the way I read it wrong, so I'll say it to you. What I thought it said is a true statement, and that is love wants the truth for everyone. And I believe that. Real love wants the truth for everybody. And so Paul was emotionally invested, but not emotionally needy. He loved them, but was not too impressed with them. And so what he sought was their good. And when you have that, you can address their deficiencies. Last thing, you go, okay, Ben, I want to be in a community of people. Younger ones around me I'm training, older ones I'm friends with and being mentored by. I want to be in a community where we really do care about each other and we really speak the truth to each other. How do you become a person that's that secure? Secure enough to love people and secure enough to speak the truth to them, even though they may reject you for that. Well, I think you can because of what Paul had in his sights. He closes verse 11, now may our God and Father himself and our Lord Jesus Christ direct our way to you. May the Lord make you increase and abound in love for one another and for all, as we do for you, that he may establish your hearts blameless in holiness before our God and Father at the coming of our Lord Jesus with all his saints. This coming of Jesus, he mentions twice in this passage. It's the word parousia, the moment he arrives, he'll be here with us. Paul had a vision of the day when history's over and Jesus shows up in our midst. And that vision of Jesus, of him coming and leading us into an eternity with him, that captured Paul's vision. And C.S. Lewis said it. He said, the people who make the greatest impact in this world are the people who have their sights firmly set on the next one. And that was Paul. I have a vision of Jesus, the one who came and embodied love, loved us. The one who came and was bold enough to speak the truth to us, that you're dead in your trespasses and sins. You're offensive to God. And yet I have come not to kick you aside, not to judge or condemn, but to rescue. And I am that glorious Christ who came to live the perfect life you could not, die the death you deserved, beat death, vindicated before God, and who now extends open hands to any who will come and trust me to be their rescuer. Jesus came to take on pain for us and death for us, beat death for us. He's the embodiment of love, and he speaks truth that says, you need me. No one comes to the Father except through me. He calls that out, and that offends some people, but it changes people. And Paul says, I see that Jesus who did that for me, who was willing to speak the truth when it was hard, and who loved me that much. When I see him, I want to live like him. And I see that he is calling people into an eternity with him. And I don't just want to show up and go, hey, manage to not get drunk. I want to show up and say, by the grace of God through me, I'm here. And so are they. And we're happy to see you. And that vision propelled Paul. And that's my prayer for you, that as you look at your life, you will say, I'm going to walk towards my King, seeing him, becoming like him. And then I hope you will look around and see the junior high kids and high school kids and freshmen and sophomores around you. And Paul's prayer for them is my prayer for you, that your love would increase and abound for us and for all. So that when this day comes, the arrival of Jesus, we're standing with a community that we gave everything for. Because in the end, that's what matters. That's what matters. And so you say, Ben, how do I get a community like that? You pray. Paul thanks God for them. You become a person like this. I remember for me, my sophomore year, I sat in the back of a Christian meeting, and I was just so angry that none of them were saying hi to me. And I'm like, you're a bunch of hypocrites. And then I remember, it was the gracious voice of the Lord that came and said, then what are you? Because I wasn't saying hi to them either. And I had never pulled the lens back, and he went, I'm a part of the problem. And some of you, if you've heard this and be like, I wanted to be, this Christian community is all judgmental, and I hate all y'all. Hey, you be the solution. You go be nice to somebody. You legitimately love people, and then lovingly speak the truth to them. And you become a catalyst for a new community by the grace of God. And juniors and seniors, you gather the young ones around you to do this. And non-Christians, if you were in a Christian community that wasn't like this, try again. Don't throw away Christ because you had some people with his name plastered on them who didn't act like this. This is what Christian community should be. Loving, invested, but not needy, speaking the truth, and changing the world. And by the grace of God, that's exactly what we can all be.